So my name is Todd Hennessey. I'm currently the Dean of the School of Fine Arts at Grenfell Campus, which is a campus of Memorial University of Newfoundland, located on the west coast of the island of the province in Corbrook. And I am a theater director by background and have been doing that for quite some years now. And also have had for a long time, I guess, an abiding interest in technology and all things digital, although they don't always mix those two things. And in the last couple of years, I've been heavily involved with starting, organizing and starting some startup, some maker spaces, innovation centers, and trying to think about ways that digital technology can be useful to communities and makers and creative types, largely on the west coast of the island of Newfoundland. So, in asking me to describe the sandbox model, I think it's a very fascinating question, and I might roam around a little bit, but I'll try and answer as best I can. So, the first thing I guess is, what do we mean when we say sandbox, and how does that apply? And I don't want to, I don't know if it's, I don't want to be sort of silly about it, but if we kind of run with the metaphor, then a sandbox suggests a enclosed but free form, kind of free open space in which people can do whatever they like without fear of it maybe interfering with other systems or doing any kind of kind of harm, or and just being able to knock it down and start over, being free to be completely expressive without necessarily having an impact on other things. That's in the sandbox. Again, if you want to kind of run with that metaphor. So what does a digital sandbox mean? And I think in answering that question, well, I'll try and come back to why it's important in the first place. But if we talk about a digital sandbox, then I think what we're talking about is a set of tools, mainly digital, for artists and other creative types to freely do stuff, to build it up, knock it down, try things out, prototype, innovate, just be really free to create in all manner of ways, and in ways that don't necessarily, again, if you use that kind of sandbox metaphor, that don't necessarily impact or have an influence on other things or systems. To back up from that, I think it's been my experience over the last couple of years in trying to develop these sandboxes that no matter what, access is key. There's a learning curve, I suppose, what I'm trying to say with digital technologies, and helping people overcome those roadblocks or hurdles, or just have access to the equipment, is really key. And I know we're going to talk about that a little bit later on, but I think access is really important. I think in the main, making sure the folks who want to use this kind of technology have access to this technology and then have the supports around it is really important. And then again, so along with that, the idea that we're giving people, communities, the opportunity to be able to express themselves however they like in that medium. So, does this model allow folks locally to be involved? I think it does. I think the use cases that it does, and I'll say this from a couple of different perspectives. Again, my own experience here on the West Coast, which is the creation of the makerspace, the creation of a couple of digital kind of fab labs here, the creation of a local innovation center. And I have to say, as Dean of the School of Fine Arts, we've tried to do open nights at the university, invite makers in, and by that I mean creators of all stripes to come on the campus and create. And folks have really responded well to that. Folks have taken advantage of the space that we've made available. The classes we put on, the opportunities we've put on, provided for people, has attracted a lot of interest from a broad range of people, from folks who consider themselves, I suppose, to be artists, folks who consider themselves to be makers primarily, the sort of DIY crowd, if you sort of like. And the combination of those two things is really cool. But folks have used the space. And I think for me, it's making sure we work hard to let people know they can come in. And I think from a university perspective, just for a second, I think there was a perceived barrier to entry there. And I don't know that the public is always confident or sure they can have access. So we've tried, I think this is true, I think we've tried really hard to make sure that the community at large, however you want to define that, has access and can use these tools, and that we provide necessary supports to use those tools. So the answer, the broad answer to the question is yes. The other feature of all of this is the kind of outreach work we've been trying to do. So I think in addition to having spaces here, and I'm you know, for those who don't know, the west coast of Newfoundland is fairly sparsely populated. You know, Corner Brook is the largest kind of center here. It's only 20,000 people. So we're not talking about a large population base, but a string of small communities up and down the coast. And we've tried to move into those, to go to those communities as well, to bring learning labs or mobile units, in some cases, very DIY, very technical, coding carts and that sort of thing, or also, you know, if you like, more artistic sorts of ventures, to make sure that we're providing access as best we can to the entire region of the west coast of Newfoundland, which is a pretty extensive geographic area, not without its hurdles, but I think it's really important to get out to the community. So I think making sure that again, for those who want to be able to work in this way, that we can help provide those tools that folks, you know, can work in this way. The strategy for bringing people together, in my experience, has been pretty grassroots. I think sometimes, and folks here in this area are doing this, and I would take some pains to emphasize that. What some groups have been doing is simply throwing together, you know, events, calling people together, advertising it, just making it as welcome and as inviting an opportunity and a space as can be, and really pitching it as the chance to play. Again, it's a sandbox model, right? There's no outcome here. There's no perception we're going to get to a product. Let's just bring all of our expertise together. You know, it happens I'm a theater director. It happens that someone's a lighting designer. It happens someone's a coder, projection artist. You know, whatever. Get in a room, play, talk about stuff, try things out, try the tools, see what the roadblocks are, and I think in all of that, the transfer of knowledge is really kind of interesting, important, and cool, that we're helping each other, you know, with our various projects, identifying what the issues happen to be, helping each other solve problems. But yeah, the real key thing is making sure that we are as inviting as we can be to these things, that everyone feels they're welcome, and that we can just, again, sandbox, try it out, see what happens. No harm come of it. There's no fear of failure. In fact, failing is really good, and let folks try it on. That helps us identify, you know, barriers, problems, you know, things that we need to kind of overcome as a group. And I really like that approach, and I think it's been really very productive. I mean, I absolutely understand that everybody wants to work in this way, and everybody has interest in digital technologies, and that's fine. I'm not suggesting for a second everybody should, but for those who are, and for those who think this represents an interesting way to invent or to create or whatever, I think making sure folks can get at it is really important. And that sense of community is really important. I do kind of want to say something about innovation just for a second, and I don't mean to sound, you know, all pedantic or anything else, but innovation. What's innovation? Innovation, to my mind, talks about reinventing, retooling, refining systems that already exist. So I own a machine that makes widgets, and I get some innovation money to help me make more widgets more efficiently. That's great, and it's great for in a lot of ways. I'm not suggesting this is a danger, but something to think about, I suppose, is that the emphasis is always on what we're already doing when we talk about innovation, at least how I've heard it explained, which is to say, right, making current systems more efficient. Again, excellent. But what are the new systems? What are the things we haven't thought about yet? What are the things that we, you know, are lying in wait to be invented? And I think invention is the other thing that's really important to me in this. And that might be my perspective, I don't know, maybe as a creator, I don't know. The idea that you can make something new sometimes gets lost in that rush to innovate. And I think innovation is attractive in a lot of people's minds, particularly funding agents and governments, because it can be measured. If I can make my widget machine more efficient, I can justify the money you've given me to make my widget machine more efficient. But if I say to you, I want to do something brand new, then it's a harder sell. So I think we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that any system, I don't necessarily think this is tied to digital technologies, any technology makes us better, brings efficiencies, but it also allows us to create something brand new. And I think if we're, part of me thinks at least, that if we're going to think our way out of some of these issues that we find ourselves in, then the brand new sometimes can be useful, or you know what I mean? The spirit of invention. And the other thing I would say very, very quickly, and I don't want to get too politicized here, is that the lesson I've learned over the last couple of years, I will admit to you freely, a hard lesson for me to learn is that we really have to respect local knowledge. And while we're talking about these systems, and while we're talking about these things, particularly when we're talking about going into communities, we really need to be responsive to the community. Really need to be paying attention to what folks on the ground really want. And I've certainly, as a university professor, not to be critical of my colleagues or anything else, but I think the impulse is to go in with decisions made, or we have thought this through, we have an answer for you, without ever actually thinking what the question is. And I think asking the right questions is really important. And that's, I simply say it's a mistake that I've made in the last couple of years, is presuming that we have some solutions, and we don't. Or more to the point, the solutions are much richer if they come from the folks you're trying to talk to, deal with, whatever else, right? So yeah, that's what I would say with innovation generally, and what I would say with this work more generally is that we cannot lose sight of the community, the folks that we're saying we want to work with. I really think the question about access is really key, and the question about local knowledge is really key. And I think if you're going to work, when I say Western Newfoundland, I mean, we tend to think of ourselves as spilling the Labrador as well. And I was raised in Labrador, so I have a particular affinity for that part of the country. But again, I think I have some sense of the resentment that's felt when folks come from outside without really having done their homework. And I think so. I say I have to say, even having grown up in that environment, I've been guilty of it. And in the last couple of years, really have, I think, become attuned to the fact that you've got to work with local people, and you've got to respect local knowledge. It's simple, right? Simple, but the folks on the ground have the information you want. The folks on the ground understand how these things work, and they understand what they're looking for, and they understand what they need. It's not for me to presume that I know better, or for me to presume that I can do it better. It's for me to listen and say, yeah, you know what? Cool. It might be that I have some tools that help me get there, and if I do, let's figure that out. And in these conversations that I've been having through this organization, which has been amazing, the other thing that I heard a little while ago is the importance of making sure that we don't just vanish, that we remain accessible, and that folks you continue to help us. We're there to be supportive. So we need to stop this kind of in out, quickly arrive, set up your tent, do a bunch of stuff, and leave. I think we need to think about what the overall impact is over a period of time, and if we can, and to remain accessible. I mean, we all sort of say, "Here's my number, call me," but do we check in enough? Are we there enough? Are we present enough? And I think, again, I really think that these kinds of technologies, in addition to everything else, help us build better information networks and methods of communication. Some of it's very low tech, doesn't need to be, some of it's very easy, and just allows us to stay in better touch with one another. And if we're going to be, if I'm going to be working on a project, as I am, on the Great Northern Peninsula, which is 800 kilometers away, I think. It's a long ways away. Then we need to stay in touch. We need to figure out how we can effectively do that and not just disappear, if we want it to be meaningful, and if that participation is welcome in the first place. So, building out these networks is really, really, really critical. And again, just being really respectful of what's on the ground is just, it's paramount.